We remember Transgender Day of Remembrance 2020, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill LGBTQ Center. About Tidor. Transgender Day of Remembrance was set aside to memorialize those who were killed due to anti-transgender hatred or prejudice. The event is held in November to honor Rita Hester, whose murder on November 28, 1998, kicked off the Remembering Our Dead web project and the San Francisco Candlelight Vigil in 1999. Rita Hester's murder, like most anti-transgender murder cases, has yet to be resolved. In 2015, the organization Breakout created Trans Day of Resilience, inviting groups across the U.S. to join them in uplifting the lives and resistance of trans people of color. This digital memorial was organized by the UNC-Chapel Hill LGBTQ Center in lieu of an in-person vigil to allow broad participation while many campus members work remotely.
We remember Nikki Kuhnhausen. Nikki Kuhnhausen, a 17-year-old transgender girl, was killed in Clark County, Washington. She enjoyed sharing videos of her dancing and singing on her Facebook, and she often posted memes to entertain her friends. Her mother said that her daughter, quote, had so much potential. She will never graduate from high school, feel the sun on her face, or celebrate her 18th birthday, end quote.
Angel Rose Garcia, a 21-year-old trans woman of color, died on December 10, 2019. Her passing was marked by the creation of the Angel Rose Artist Collective, which describes itself as a multilingual two-spirit, Native American transgender, intersex, asexual, queer plus, led collective of artists, healers, educators, and advocates, uplifting two-spirit nation and BIPOC communities through art and land justice.
We remember Alice Carter. Alice Carter, known as Baby Alice, was a 35-year-old trans woman who died on December 18, 2019. She was homeless and had slept outside of a McDonald's in Washington, D.C. for the past 12 years. An individual who worked on the street said, quote, "A more harmless and innocent soul has never shared our streets. She'll be missed terribly. Alice loved wearing pink, composing poetry, and of course, McDonald's strawberry milkshakes." End quote.
Yahira Nesby was a 33-year-old Black transgender woman from Charlotte, North Carolina. She resided in Brooklyn, New York, where she was part of the local ball scene, a member of the House of Chanel. Yahira was known for her strong faith and for being genuinely good people who put smiles on the faces of those around her. She was found with fatal gunshot wounds by police responding to a 911 call.
Mia Penny was a Black trans woman who was killed by armed members of a private security company who were responding to a call about an intruder in a vacant DC apartment building. She was 26 years old. Her mother said that Mia was very lovable and like a best friend to her.
We remember Dustin Parker. Dustin Parker was a 25-year-old transgender man who was murdered while working as a taxi driver. He was a founding member of Oklahomans for Equality, McAllister Chapter, Southeastern Equality, SEEQ, an organization that seeks equal rights for LGBTQ plus individuals and families through intersectional advocacy, education, programs, and alliances. His employer held a fundraiser to support his family, and the McAllister community held a vigil in his memory. He is survived by his wife, Regina, and their children.
We remember Alexa Negron Luciano. Alexa Negron Luciano was a homeless 29-year-old trans woman. She was murdered on February 24, 2020 in Toa Baja, Puerto Rico, several hours after police were called on her for using a McDonald's women's bathroom. Alexa carried a broken rearview mirror with her everywhere so she could see who was behind her. Her murders received international coverage with many influential figures such as Elizabeth Warren, Bad Bunny, and India Moore working to raise awareness of this injustice.
Yampi Mendez Araco was a 19-year-old Puerto Rican transgender man who loved the Miami Heat basketball team. According to a report filed by his mother, Yampi was physically attacked just hours before he was found in a park with a fatal gunshot wound.
Monica Diamond was a 34-year-old Black trans woman who was murdered on March 18, 2020 in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was the co-owner and founder of an event promotion company that was about to honor its 10th anniversary. She was active in the Charlotte LGBTQ community and was the chosen mother to many.
Lexi Ebony Sutton was a 33-year-old Black trans woman who was murdered in Harlem, New York on March 28, 2020. Lexi loved poetry, makeup, and fashion. One friend said that she really looked up to Lexi because of her tolerance and respect. The friend went on to say that Lexi had a beautiful heart. She was very gifted.
We remember Ashley Moore. Ashley Moore was a 26-year-old Black trans woman who was killed on April 1st, 2020. Ashley was a chef and posted pictures of the intricate food she made on her Instagram account. One of Ashley's closest friends said that Ashley was, quote, a hard-working woman. All she did was work, cook, and do what she had to do, end quote. Despite the mysterious injuries found on her body, Newark police waited 4 months before starting an investigation into her death. The outcry over the handling of this case caused an Ashley Moore amendment to be added to Newark's LGBTQ policy, requiring police to call LGBTQ organizations for assistance in similar cases.
We remember Johanna Metzger. Johanna Metzger was a 25-year-old trans woman who was killed in Baltimore on April 11, 2020. According to her mother, Johanna had taught herself how to play multiple instruments and was a college graduate. Because of COVID-19, her loved ones were not able to physically gather to mourn her death.
Penelope Diaz Ramirez, a 31-year-old trans woman of color, was killed on April 13, 2020, at a correctional complex in Puerto Rico. Penelope was consistently misgendered by prison authorities and denied access to health care prior to her death. Leila Pelaez Sanchez was a 21-year-old trans Latina woman who was murdered on April 21st. She had just moved to Puerto Rico when she, along with trans woman Serena Angelique Velasquez Ramos, was murdered. Leila's cousin described her as an easygoing young woman who had been raised by her grandmother and was just beginning to explore the world.
We remember Serena. Serena Angelique Velasquez was a 32-year-old trans woman of color who was killed in Puerto Rico on April 21st, along with Leila Pelaez Sanchez, another trans woman. Serena was visiting the island on vacation and was set to return to her home in Queens, New York at the end of the month. She loved her pets, 2 cats and a dog. She also had a passion for exploring her spiritual side through tarot card readings. She maintained a YouTube channel where she taught audiences about her passion.
Nina Pop, a 28-year-old trans woman of color, was killed on May 3, 2020. According to a friend, she was very happy and everyone loved her. On Facebook, she often posted about her family, sharing photos of herself with her siblings. Siblings left mourning the death of their sister.
Halee J. O'Regan was a 20-year-old transgender woman. On her Twitter, she often spoke out against injustice, including LGBTQ inequality, the prison industrial complex, and the need to decriminalize sex work. On Trans Day of Visibility, she posted, "I was looking at the pictures I used to take before I transitioned versus now, and it made me realize I'm way happier than I used to be. I love myself now. Thank you to everyone who's ever supported me, and to anyone who hasn't, I hope you come around. I'm happy and proud to be myself."
Jane Thompson was a 33-year-old white transgender woman. She was described by a friend as quiet on the surface, but funny and lively if she let you in and you were able to get to know her. He went on to describe how in the morning he and Jane would have a silent disco cigarette and dance on their porch together. Jane was killed by a Colorado state trooper responding to reports that she'd been sitting unresponsive outside of a market for hours.
Tony McDade was a 38-year-old black transgender man from Tallahassee, Florida, who loved cooking, basketball, and boxing. He had recently been released from a long stay in prison where he once wrote to a judge that he had mental health and substance use issues that were worsened by his incarceration. Tony was attacked by a group of people, after which he vowed revenge in a Facebook Live before allegedly killing his neighbor. He was killed by police later that day.
We remember Selena Reyes Hernandez. Selena Reyes Hernandez was a 37-year-old trans Latina who, quote, lived her beautiful truth out loud and died because of it, end quote. She was killed on May 31st, 2020. She was murdered by a man who was so upset that she was trans that he shot her twice, left her home, and then came back to shoot her body again.
Dominique Remy Fells was a black trans woman who was murdered on June 9th, 2020, at the age of 27. Remy was described by one friend as living her truth so loud you could hear her a mile away. She was a dancer and an artist, and was making plans to go back to school to be a fashion designer when she was murdered.
We remember Rhea Milton. Rhea Milton was a 25-year-old black trans woman who loved traveling and being outside and was described as outgoing, helpful, and someone who always put her family first. According to her mother, she just wanted to be accepted for who she was.
We remember Brian Egypt Powers. Brian Joseph Powers, who also went by Egypt, was a 43-year-old black, gender nonconforming, transgender man. According to family, he was a, quote, good Christian person who loved to cook and who brought warmth and life to everyone he met. As a child, Brian, quote, dreamed of becoming a backup dancer for Janet Jackson or Paula Abdul, end quote. Details about his murder are unknown. His body was found on a sidewalk with gunshot wounds.
Brayla Stone was a 17-year-old black transgender girl whose favorite colors were red and purple. Her family described her as a fun-loving and generous person. By all reports, Brayla's life was filled with music making, laughter, and colorful wigs. Her body was found in a car in her hometown.
We remember Tatiana Hall. Tatiana Hall was a 22-year-old black transgender woman from Newark, New York, who loved fashion and had dreams of opening her own boutique or starting a fashion line someday. In July, biological family, chosen family, and friends gathered for a vigil in her remembrance, many with balloons in her favorite color, purple. Her body was found abandoned in the street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where friends think that she may have been visiting a love interest.
Drea McCarthy was a black trans woman who was murdered on June 30th, 2020. She was 28 years old at the time of her murder.
Mercy Mack Ritchie was a 22-year-old Black trans woman. Her sister described Mercy as the sunshine in your bad day. She was the type of woman who would pull over in a parking lot and start dancing. She enjoyed roller skating and one day hoped to be a mom. She was murdered on June 30th, 2020, allegedly by a man who had known her from childhood.
We remember Shaky Peters. Shaky Peters was a 32-year-old Black trans woman who would, quote, provide moments of joy and laughter that sustained us, according to a friend. Quote, whenever you're facing the systemic issues we face as Black people, that triple identity of being a Black trans woman, it's easy to just give up or not to want to get out of bed. But you never saw Shaky do that. She was murdered in Louisiana on July 1st, 2020.
Bree Black was a 27-year-old Black trans woman who also went by Nuff Black. They were murdered on July 3rd, 2020 in Pompano Beach, Florida.
Summer Taylor was a white non-binary person who was at a protest against racism and police violence when they were struck by a car. Summer's family said that they were a passionate supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement and will want to be remembered as an ally of Black lives. They were 24 years old at the time of their death.
We remember Marilyn Cazares. Marilyn Cazares was a 22-year-old transgender Latina described by her aunt as very brave, very outspoken, and very loved. She was murdered on July 16, 2020. Since her death, family and friends have spoken out about a young woman who lived her truth despite being bullied and ridiculed by members of her community.
Koisha D. Hardy was a 22-year-old Black trans woman who worked as a hairstylist and was extremely loved by her community. She was killed in Louisiana on July 27, 2020. On Facebook, many of Hardy's loved ones are sharing memories of their time together. One person posted a video of Hardy dancing spontaneously with friends. Others describe her as loyal, loving, always smiling, the life of all parties, and truly one of a kind.
We remember Asia Raquel Roan Spears. Asia Raquel Roan Spears, who also went by Rocky Roan, was a 34-year-old Black transgender woman who lived in Portland, Oregon. She was murdered on July 28, 2020, as she was attending a vigil for a victim of gun violence. Asia was the owner and founder of International Barbie, a Portland-based clothing brand. She used her Facebook page to call out racial injustice, especially violence by police, and advocated for a world free from white supremacy. In her spare time, she volunteered at a local nonprofit, helping kids transition out of foster care.
Dior H. Ova, who also went by Tiffany Harris, was a Black transgender woman who was murdered on July 28, 2020. She was remembered by a friend as a shopaholic who was obsessed with Louis Vuitton. According to her Facebook profile, she worked as a personal shopper and enjoyed watching Desperate Housewives and Nip Tuck.
We remember Key Sam. Key Sam was a Black trans woman who was murdered at the age of 24. Her social media was filled with photos of her niece, dogs, and nails. Distraught friends expressed kind words for Sam on her Instagram page. "This can't be true," said one shocked commenter. Another told her to rest in love. Others left broken heart emojis.
Isabella Mia Lofton died on September 7, 2020, at the age of 21. She was remembered by her sister as someone who was kind to others despite enduring adversity throughout her life.
Ariane Burnett, a 37-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered on September 19, 2020 in Independence, Missouri. Her family was in the midst of planning her surprise birthday party when they got the news that she had been killed. Ariane described herself as someone who looks and walks like a Barbie. Her friends said that Ariane was a goddess. Can you hear me? Fun. When I say goddess, she was everything. If you wanted to have a good day, you needed to smile. Ariane was the person you wanted by your side.
Mia Green was a Black trans woman who was murdered on September 28, 2020. She was 29 at the time of her death. On social media, one friend shared that her smile was so perfect and so contagious. She made me laugh. Another said that she was such a sweet spirit.
Michelle Ramos Varga, who also went by Michelin, was a Puerto Rican trans woman who was killed on September 30th, 2020. She was 33 years old at the time of her murder. She was studying to be a nurse because she was passionate about helping people.
We remember Felicia Harris. Felicia Harris, a 33-year-old Black trans woman, was murdered on October 1st, 2020. She was an interior decorator who ran her own company. She learned about decorating from her late grandmother. A friend said that, quote, everybody's going to remember Felicia. That laugh, the smile, the smiles, the talks, the arguments, the attitudes. Everybody is going to remember who Felicia Harris is. Nobody would ever forget who that is.
Brooklyn Deshauna Smith was a Black trans woman who was murdered on October 7th, 2020. She was a cosmetology student who had just celebrated her 20th birthday 2 weeks before she was killed.
We remember Sarah Blackwood. Sarah Blackwood, a 39-year-old white trans woman, was shot and killed while walking home on National Coming Out Day. Sarah was an avid fan of the show My Little Pony and identified the most with Shutterfly because, quote, she was shy like her. She leaves behind her partner of 8 years.
Angel Haynes was a 25-year-old Black transgender woman who worked as a cosmetologist and had just come out as trans after high school. Her best friend described her as very funny and said that she was nice to everyone. Angel was fatally shot on October 30th in Memphis, Tennessee. She would have celebrated her 26th birthday in December.
Support is available. Transgender Day of Remembrance is always a difficult time for transgender and gender nonconforming community members. These resources are available to you for various types of support. The UNC-Chapel Hill LGBTQ Center, including our Trans Talk Tuesday support group. You can find more information at lgbtq.unc.edu. The center is open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and the group has meeting times on first and third Tuesdays of the month. Counseling and psychological services, including its gender and sexuality spectrum group. You can find more information at caps.unc.edu and their 24/7 phone line, 919-966-3658. The UNC-Chapel Hill QTPOC student organization, including its UNC-Chapel Hill QTPOC Fund. You can find more information at qtpoc.wixsite.com/fund. The LGBTQ Pop-Up Center of Carborough, including its QTIPOC Survival Fund. You can find more information at facebook.com/LGBTQ Carborough. The LGBTQ Center of Durham, including its host home program for young adults. You can find more information at lgbtqcenterofdurham.org. Trans Lifeline, a national peer support and crisis hotline, which you can reach at 877-565-8860. and the Trevor Project, a national crisis support hotline and chat line for ages 25 and under, which you can reach at 1-866-488-7386 or by texting the word START to 678-678.